Hello and welcome to these very special exclusive interviews from Raw and the Boar for the SU Spring Elections 2024. I'm James Lewis, the head of news at Raw, and I'm delighted to be joined by the news editor at the Boar, Luke Chapman. Luke, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, James. Very excited to be here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Again, excited to be getting on to the presidential interviews, which we'll get onto in just a second. Now, as it is spring election week here at the SU, we've already had our interview program for the vice presidential positions, which you'll be able to find where you found this one on YouTube. And once you've been able to watch all these interviews, have a look at the candidate question times last week, read the manifestos online, you are able to vote. Voting nice and simple on the Warwick SU website, warwicksu.com/elections. You'll be able to find all of the details there. And there are also some very special freebies that are on offer for voting. Luke, have any of them caught your fancy?
It's got to be the free drink from Curiosity, James, I'd say.
Yeah, indeed. A free large drink from Curiosity when you vote. They've also got some election week specials on their menu this week, which I'm going to run through quickly. We've got a candidate shake, a demo coffee, and a do not forget to vote as the three specials of the week. So Curiosity really going for the spring elections vibes there. But as we said, warwicksu.com/elections is where you're able to vote. Now, let's get on to the presidential candidates and the interviews that we're doing today. So the role of president, they are going to be the primary spokesperson for the Students Union. They will be leading and being the face of all public relation matters. They're also the main representative of the SU to the university and its executive body, as well as different local, regional, national and international bodies. They'll be advocating and lobbying on behalf of students for their interests and to make positive change. They'll be a member of key university committees like the University Council and the Senate, and be the trustee of one of the of a multi-million pound organisation. And they'll also be chair of the board of trustees. We're going to come on to that a little bit later on. So the presidential candidates running this year are Hamza Ahmad, Haushan Ma, Anaya Nahul, Molly Palmer, and Marie Vengerov. All of the candidates were offered the chance to be interviewed by Raw and the Boar, and two of the candidates took us up on that offer, Anaya Nahul and Molly Palmer. And going in alphabetical order, we are going to hear from Anaya first in her interview that she did with Rachel from the Boar.
Hi, I'm Rachel Gore from the Boar, and I'm here to interview Anaya, who is running for president in the upcoming SU elections.
Hi.
Hi, Anaya. Thank you for joining us. So the first question that I've got for you today is, what would your key priorities be if you were elected president?
All right, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And right, I'll get on to sort of my main core priorities. There are 5 key ones. So the first one is empowering student voice and making sure that the SU and its democratic procedures are accessible and open to all students, not just those who are hyper involved. Second would be tackling cost of living crisis, so making essentials, food, transportation, sports clubs and societies, socializing as well, more affordable for students, both short and long-term solutions. Third would be to help make work safer. It's been a major priority of mine ever since I was a women's officer, and it's something I've worked on a lot this year. So I really want to see that sort of go through, and on a larger scale, I think tackle the issue of safety in various areas around campus as well. The fourth would be diverse well-being support, so making sure that that is accessible to all students, including international students, which are underrepresented and don't engage with the well-being services that we offer as much. And the fifth would be named it aptly, Your Education, Your Choice. So push for more self-certifications across the board and departments, and for varied assessment methods so that students can pick and choose how they actually want to work.
You touched on it there, but how will you support students through the cost of living crisis?
Yes, excellent question. sort of continuing the work that is in progress that I'm the current lead on the SU's cost of living campaign. So I work with the university and with fellow officers and a lot of stakeholders really on identifying where students need support and what we can do to sort of go about that. For me, that would include making my campaign, so End Period Poverty and the Free Breakfast Club, permanent and offered by the union, regardless of sort of which officer is in place. Prioritize the SU becoming a real living wage employer, which we could do by working with the university. Lobby nationally for sort of affordable housing strategies, because I think that's gaining a lot of momentum now, and we can do a lot as sabbatical officers and SUs, like through the Russell Group Students Union or the NUS, and even with our local district councils. So affordable housing and for maintenance loans to rise with inflation. Also, sorry, I just keep going. Providing free workshops to students to teach them life skills that aren't really taught in general. So budgeting, cooking, sustainable practices like how to actually make use of the things you have in various ways. Also lock down the price of essentials in the SU and university outlets. I think Ruth has already done a few things, but I think we can extend that to include halal, vegan, kosher options so that it's accessible to every student. Also continue Anna's Better Buses campaign and tackle the cost of sports, also for non-Bucks clubs, which are underrepresented, I think, in those spaces.
As president, you'll represent a diverse range of students with different needs. How will you ensure that the SU is accessible to all and represents the Warwick community?
That's an excellent question. It's one that sort of I've asked myself as a part of the union and before I ran for a part-time role and a full-time role. I think the main issue is the lack of student engagement from various student groups. I think there are a few very vocal students who are amazing, who get involved, but they are sort of the only loud voices in the room. So I think my first priority, which is sort of about student democracy, that would be key for it. That includes publicizing all student votes, motions, campaign funding deadlines, for example, making sure that they reach the right people, making our decision-making processes transparent, because I feel like a lot of student groups just withdraw because they feel like there's a lack of clarity around how we make decisions and how the SU is supposed to go about its sort of work and making the student voice heard. I think it should be heard. I think it should be the center of everything we do. So sort of making that transparent and working with students as much as possible instead of sort of in our own little spheres. Increasing student engagement with easy to access resources. So for example, students who have never written a motion before should be able to easily instead of contacting other students who have. And that should be our essentially problem in our job. So I think policy toolkits, a lot of things that we've sort of talked about, I want to action them and actually make them happen. And for international students specifically, because they are underrepresented, I would know, I'm one of them. I think I'm the first international student officer in 2 years to be a full-time officer. And I can see that there's a lack of sort of engagement with them as a whole because they're just not considered in a lot of spaces unless you bring it up. So through the SU especially, I'd say having tailored support for international students through the Advice Center would be really vital because that's something that the university can't really offer the way we can. And just a couple of things about associations as well, making sure that they actually represent students and, again, are catered to the average student instead of just, students who are hyperlocal, maybe.
Yeah. How will you seek to improve public transport options for students, especially the buses from Leamington and Coventry?
This is a great question. The thing is, Anna's just done a Better Buses survey, so that's given us some really good data. I think we have over 900 responses at the minute, and that details sort of the bus pass, how many students can afford it, how many students rely on buses as their only mode of transport. And that's really useful for us when we, hopefully, if I do get elected, I'll be able to negotiate with Stagecoach and National Express and sort of talk to them about making long-term feasible and sustainable options available to students. So for example, some students who only have to be on campus 1 day a week or something, they could get a type of flexible pass and also obviously reduce the overall cost to students especially. I think there's a very good, issue with parking permit, like not a very good issue, sorry. Just something that has been brought up and has been really good to know is the issues for medical students specifically, because they typically have to drive on to campus or to their placement, and getting parking permits and stuff sorted out for them. So that'll be another priority.
Report and Support saw an increase in disclosures of harassment and bullying last academic year. What will you do to address this?
With Report and Support, I think it's both a good and a bad thing that disclosures have gone up. It could be a good thing because maybe awareness of the actual source of support has increased in the past year, and it could be bad because that means that harassment is on the rise on campus. So how I would work to tackle that is essentially through a campaign that already exists that I started this year. It's called Safer Warwick. There are a plethora of things in it that I've worked to sort of embed in the SU, and a lot of data that I've gathered with the university with the Safer Warwick survey. So we interviewed about 1,269 students, I believe, about safety on campus and off campus. And with the on-campus questions, it was generally about, do you feel safe? Do you feel like you're being targeted, and why? And what can we do to support it? When it comes to harassment, obviously, though, I think that's more of a cultural thing that we need to tackle. And for me, I think that would include tackling broader themes of discrimination on campus, and especially misogyny and sexism, how rife that is, and how that contributes to the rape culture, and how people it's how it's enforced through sort of drinking culture, perhaps, or by sort of a lack of voices on it. I think that's a really big issue that we need to tackle. And again, racism has also seen a spike, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism as well in recent times, as we know. It is about creating a culture where we can actually have open dialogues with each other and understand that we are human beings first. I think that's a much larger piece, but I will do my absolute best to initiate those conversations and create spaces where students feel like they are able to contribute as themselves.
On the note of safety, what services will you work with to ensure that campus is a safe place to be for all students, no matter the time of day?
Excellent question. I have a lot of data to back that up. So are my proposals. Right, so yeah, okay, I'm gonna try and make this as brief as possible, actually. The number one thing the students want per our surveys is better lighting at night, because students generally feel quite safe on campus during the day. But again, I think that's physical safety-wise. When it comes to feeling targeted or discriminated or harassed, that is definitely different. But when it comes to physical safety, I guess dropping curbs, for example, so that all spaces on campus are physically accessible to students with disabilities and those who have to use wheelchairs especially. That's a massive issue. When it comes to sort of off-campus and at night issues, I'm trying to get, hopefully as president, I will be able to push harder for the introduction of Safe Zone or an app like it, so that'll allow students to get in touch with the community safety team or the well-being service if we can get a 24/7 mental health nurse on campus, as well as first aid. So wherever they are, regardless, if they're on campus, if they're off campus, then our teams will be alerted to where they are and what the situation is, but they might be referred to local services instead. But on campus, they'll be able to get immediate support and wouldn't have to wait too long. I've also worked in my position as VP Welfare and Campaigns. I've worked with Warwickshire District Council and their community safety team and first aid teams to set up a safe space in Leamington Spa. So I think you might know it's sort of at the entrance of Jefferson Gardens on the parade. And that's been really well received. We've had quite a few people, community and students, approach it and use it. And they've been able to get help every Friday night, and that's been really nice. Also, oh good God, there's so much to say. Apologies. I'll just speed run. Emma and I also made our Women in binary students' self-defense classes permanent as well this year, so that's been really good. We're continuing working with sports clubs and other communities on campus to just make sure that students are able to access it, and also that helps them feel safe, not just equips them with skills that they need. And again, I would also work towards a long-term model of, I'd say, prevention and support for students who might be at risk of, or well, that would be all students, but students who might have been harassed or sexually assaulted as well, with well-being and their sexual and domestic abuse advisor, who was absolutely amazing, as well as the advice center. So yeah, quite a few things there. Also, this links to the buses question. I'd really like to get a late night taxi service or bus shuttle working between Coventry and campus, because buses essentially stop after 1 a.m., I believe, and they continue to Leamington until 3 a.m. And that the time difference is because essentially buses shut down at night during COVID and never started again.
On the note of mental health, how will you seek to improve student well-being?
I think overall student well-being is, we have a crisis, there's a current mental health crisis on campus. That's apparent. We can see that not just through stats, but just generally in our student community. I remember when I was a student, it was absolute chaos and everyone was suffering from burnout. So I think the first thing I'd look at is introducing not just workshops, but an overall awareness piece on how to tackle imposter syndrome for students who have just moved here, especially freshers, to help students adapt to university life and academic burnout, and strategies to actually cope with that, and like practical suggestions on how to do that. But also extending our therapy service, and I think including diverse forms of therapy, so not just talk therapy and CBT, but just more than that, I think, is needed. Working on suicide awareness and supporting students through peer-led programs, for example, and also lobbying well-being to hire multilingual advisors and run cultural awareness training. I think that is quite apparent that is needed by especially international students. I think that would be really good.
How will you work to make the SU more sustainable and hold the university accountable for its net zero targets?
I think that is more strategic. In order to do that, I think the SU is already making quite a bit of progress towards it, especially food waste and those kinds of issues. But with the university, I think it would be, if elected to president, I'd be able to work with university management and senior people essentially to lobby them and tell them this is what students want at Senate, at University Council, present papers there and make sure that they know that the students want that and that they are being held to account by us. So that'll be more strategic, and that will definitely require quite a bit of diplomacy.
How will you lobby the university to make education accessible for all at Warwick?
Education needs to be accessible to all students. I completely agree, and I'll lobby through various forms, especially through Senate, I believe. So the number one thing I talk about is how students generally don't feel like education is accessible at Warwick, and they just sort of have to deal with what they're given. But that shouldn't be the case. Education should be not just something you have to do. It should be learning something you should enjoy. So reducing the pressure on students by doing that, pushing for more self-certifications, as mentioned earlier, advocating for more quiet study spaces, because there is a lack of them across campus. Private meeting rooms as well. So that includes students who can't function in or don't function as well in really high pressure environments or really loud environments. So neurodiverse students as well could really benefit from those. I'd lobby for the early release of teaching exam timetables, because those are released quite late according to most of the student population, and it increases anxiety, uncertainty, a plethora of things that can be avoided if the university sort of organized that better. And varied assessment methods from multiple departments would support student success, especially if they have accessibility issues. And
ultimately, what will you do to make the student community aware of what the SU does and the decisions that are being made?
Also, I think I kind of touched upon this earlier, but I'll go over it as well, because I think that there is a general lack of awareness of especially our democratic structures and decisions. So, for example, with the all-student vote, a lot of students simply don't know until it is the week of the ASV. And motions, deadlines for motions as well, aren't communicated as effectively as they could have been, I believe. And this is generally accepted. So I'd work to plan those in advance, make sure that we prioritize that being at the top of our list when it comes to communicating with our students. And just sort of making all of our processes and our forums, how to approach them, how do you get a decision made, how do you change something, making that process very clear to students.
And to finish off, as SU President, you are the students' leading representative to the Vice-Chancellor. What do you think the relationship between the SU and the university should look like?
That's a great question. I think that the relationship between the SU and the university, apologize for the background noise. I think it needs to be more honest and collaborative, because genuinely speaking, a lot of university departments and stakeholders, including well-being this year, have been very open to hearing the student voice, because we know that education is being marketized, but even at that point, they want to serve students first. They want to make sure that students are getting essentially either their money's worth or the experience that they should have. So working with, for example, the Director of Student Experience on cost of living initiatives made sure that we were getting our voice heard and getting actual solutions to problems that students have been facing for years now. So in my opinion, if I do get a chance to, I will try and bolster that relationship and make sure that they know that we are here as representative students, and we're there to make sure that the student experience is at the heart of what the university and the union actually should pursue.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was the Boar's own Rachel Gore interviewing Anaya there as one of the presidential candidates for the spring elections. Now we're going to hear from the other candidate that accepted our offer of an interview. Interviewing Molly Palmer, here is Archie Clark.
Hi, I'm Archie with the Boar, and I'm here with Molly Palmer, who's running for SU President this year. Starting off with some simple questions. What would your key priorities be if you were elected as president?
So my overall sort of ambition is obviously to enhance the student experience. And in my manifesto, I outline sort of 4 main areas that I want to do this in. So supporting students with the burden caused by the cost of living crisis, improving mental health, well-being and student safety initiatives, increasing sustainability on campus, and supporting student and society campaigns.
Great, thank you very much. And secondly, as president, you'll represent a diverse range of students across the university who have different needs. How will you ensure that the SU is accessible to all those that it represents in the work community?
So we already have a forum called the Liberation and Diversity Forum. So if elected as president, what I'd quite like to do is sort of increase visibility of that forum and increase the amount of people that can access that forum, because I don't believe in it's my position to sort of say from groups that I'm in of how different groups can be represented better, but I think it's much better to build systems where other people can be uplifted. So through the Liberation Forum, yeah. Sorry, that was a very concise answer, but
that's fine, don't worry about it. So currently, as you know, we're undergoing a cost of living crisis in this country. If you're elected SU president, how would you look to support students through this cost of living crisis?
So first of all, the cost of living crisis has meant that students more often have to work alongside their studies. So the first thing that I want to do is make sure that correct advice and protection is provided to those students, whether that's through advice centres in the SU or whether that's by sort of improving the discourse around unions and things like that. Second of all, I think that the university should support employers such as the SU to provide student workers with a real living wage. Young people make up the majority of people paid minimum wage or low wage jobs. And so I think it's the SU's role to ensure that their employees aren't treated that way. And also that student employees in the university know their rights and they know when they can say no to certain contract hours and things like that, and with sufficient training and things like that. Second of all, tackling the issues of why students need to work. Accommodation costs at Warwick are insanely high. And I think the NUS said that the only affordable accommodation at this university is Whitefields. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but the university are planning to demolish it and replace it with a Cryfield Townhouses level accommodation, which is unacceptable and will just increase the inaccessibility of this university. So if sort of elected, I would like to work with the housing union Acorn with the campaigns that they've already been running to campaign against the demolition of Whitefield and overall push for lowering accommodation costs to pre-COVID levels and then freezing them there. I also think that it's atrocious, the level of like food costs on campus, and students should be able to access sort of a canteen or something like that, where they can get meals for around £3, like hot meals, to like sort of go alongside studies and things, because I think that would be really beneficial.
Thank you. So for public transport options for students, currently the main ones are the buses from Leamington and Coventry. If you became president, how would you seek to improve that transport infrastructure to the university?
So I'd try and continue Anna's Better Buses campaign, but overall use more surveys and more interactive student sort of engagement to see where these problems lie. For example, I live in South Leamington at the moment, and so for me getting on the buses, it isn't an issue, but it's when you then get to sort of like Upper Parade, Parish Church, like it's a real problem, people actually being able to get on buses. So then it's a question of, okay, so do new bus routes need to be introduced that only hit Upper Parade and Parish Church to ensure that the students that live there can have access? I also think that whilst the Stagecoach app updating so that it has better sort of predictions of when buses are going to arrive, there needs to be clear indication of when roadworks are happening and where those roadworks are happening, so that students can be more informed to make sure that they're getting to university on time and to make sure that transport isn't meaning that they're missing out on their educations. And then with the cost of bus passes, it's obviously like a hope that through like cost of living work that we can lower those bus prices so that students don't feel like they can't access their education because they live further out.
Okay, thank you very much. So this year, the report and support service at university saw an increase in disclosures of harassment and bullying last academic year. If you were elected SU president, what would you do to try and, first of all, help report and support in what it does, and secondly, decrease these numbers of disclosures?
So first of all, report and support, I think it needs, first of all, more visibility about what it actually is. It needs to be bigger scale, and there needs to be a full investigation into sort of where those reports go, the like advice offered at the end of it. And it also needs to, students need to know that there is this resource available. So like when they have complaints, no matter how small, they can report it. And that's sort of the first step in like tackling the harassment culture that we have unfortunately developed at Warwick University, is making sure that people feel like there's somewhere that they can go to say these things that have happened, even if it's like a nugget in the back of your mind that's like, this has happened and I'm not sure if this is just me or like if this is really wrong. There should be somewhere that you can go to discuss that with someone, and that's what report and support should provide. And it is up to the Students Union and up to the university to ensure that that resource is there and that it's well funded enough that it can provide the advice that it needs to students. And then in terms of sort of like where do we go after that? So first of all, the wellbeing services on campus to deal with people once they've made those comments. It needs to be better supported. It needs to be better funded. There needs to be like a better access to sort of a wider range of therapies. But also students need to be aware what the wellbeing services is. Like it's not trained therapists, it is just counsellors. And so next steps need to be sort of outlined to students about like where they can go to receive maybe better help, or like through the NHS, through like actual therapists, like how can they access that help? And then in terms of tackling the harassment culture on campus, I think that is obviously created by like a minority of people, not the majority. And it's key to underline that. And this is a solvable issue. This isn't something that you just have to lie down and accept. And I'm not going to say that I know how to cure like harassment culture in society, but the steps that we need to take is sort of making sure that services are available so that people can report things. And then we need to have campaigns and have things going on campus to like tackle these things. Like take pop, for example, it's still like incredibly high rates of spiking. And so like more needs to be done to stop that, including sort of having more first aiders, more like awareness around sort of what to do if you get spiked. So in my manifesto, I outline how I would like to sort of do a full-scale overview of the resources that university offers, and use sort of research of like other case studies where maybe other universities or other institutions have taken steps to tackle harassment culture and sort of implement that into our campus.
Okay, thank you. So keeping on the theme of making campuses a safer place, it's not just sort of things later on in night during club nights. It's more, you can have forms of racism, anti-Semitism. That's all been on the rise recently this year, and reports about it on campus. So how would you try and make campus a safer place for all at all times of day?
So in terms of, you obviously touched on racism and anti-Semitism. I don't think that currently the university structure allows students to report these issues in a way that they do feel supported. And so, for example, like the report and support system, I think most people think that that's just for like harassment or like bullying, things like that, which obviously racism and anti-Semitism comes under. But people need to feel that that is a resource they can go to, and things need to be done so that these groups feel that they can trust the SU. And I think that the way to do that is through developing systems such as the Liberation and Diversity Forum, so that people do feel represented. And I also think it's key to like have someone to listen to those people. So if I got elected, I would make sure that the full-time officers, there was set open office hours where students knew about, and that students know and feel comfortable going and discussing these issues, whether it's in sports, whether it's in societies, whether they feel like they can't access their education. I think the big issue is that people don't feel like they can be listened to, and they don't feel like even if they go and speak to someone, they're not going to receive the support. So it's about like highlighting what is available, making sure that what is available to the right level, and making sure that people can trust these systems.
Great. So how will you work to improve student mental health and well-being overall?
So first of all, Nightline is an excellent resource on campus. But what I'd quite like to do is run like a volunteering initiative to increase the amount of people volunteering for Nightline, so this can be extended to an off-campus resource as well. I think it's really helpful, even if it's just like a case of maybe something's happened and you don't have anyone to talk to about it. I think it's a really, really good resource and needs to be more widely advertised. And like the wellbeing services, as I've touched on, not only do they need to be more transparent about what they actually offer, but there needs to be more support in like what comes next and what like helping students like gain the actual support that they need, rather than just like on the surface things. I don't know if you've been watching the like other question times this week, but there's been a lot of talk about the student suicide crisis. And so I'd really be interested in listening to people's ideas on the campaigns around this and really pushing for something, because that is like a horrendous thing that the university aren't willing to accept as a problem. And we need to make it clear that it is a problem and take the appropriate steps to sort of amend that.
Okay. Following on from the all-student vote this year on plant-based retail options for the SU, what would you do to make the SU more sustainable and hold the university accountable to its net zero targets?
So, first of all, I would make sure that the university sustainability team and the student union sustainability team were connected. I think it's really important that these resources aren't split, like they need to be shared. And also make sure that connections with on-campus sustainability groups they all can discuss together. There's currently the Sustainability Forum, but it only meets twice a term. And even then, it's quite difficult to sort of discuss things because everyone is trying to tackle such a big issue. Sorry, am I okay just to blow my nose? 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Right, give me 1 second. There you go. Sorry. Yeah, so it's such like a huge issue. And because everyone is so like fragmented, it's really hard to make any progress. So the first thing I do is sort of connect these groups. And then looking at the SU itself, the amount of waste that it produces is like horrendous. And I've already started making steps to work with the Students Union to decrease like the amount of plastic in pop. Now I will admit that after the first meeting and like doing some reading and things, there is a lot of work to do, but it is something I'm really excited to change, and it will be a big project, but it's something I'm really excited to have a crack at. And also the university, one of the important things about increasing sustainability, especially at this university, is that it is a leading research university. And so I think that it needs to apply the things that its researchers are finding to the campus. For example, like I do biology, there's a fantastic geneticist, Eric Holub, that's done a lot of work on beans and genetically modifying beans that can be grown in the UK. And these are currently being sold in like small shops in Leamington. So there's no reason why these can't be sold on campus and these can't be sold in the Duck and things like that. And it's like just little things like that the university could be so much better. And then in terms of like the carbon emissions, the university sort of pledged to cut its carbon emissions by 50% by like 2030. But if you look at the stats, it's actually increasing, it's not decreasing. And so the university really need to push like having sort of wind turbines on campus, having like solar panels on buildings, building buildings that are actually energy efficient, and building buildings with the like mindset of them lasting for a long time, not this like short-term temporary mindset that they currently have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So how will you lobby the university to make education accessible for all at Warwick, for all students attending?
So first of all, that's sort of like quite a heavy question. It needs to be split down because obviously all students require different accessibility things. So if we first look at disability accessibility, first of all, students need to be provided with more support in diagnosing things such as autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. And those pathways need to be highlighted better, and the support that you can receive and the report that you should receive needs to be highlighted and needs to be advertised much, much, much more than it currently is. Then in terms of buildings, the university needs to be pushed, and the student body, it needs to be shown like how passionate we are about this subject, about everyone should be able to access the rooms on campus, which currently they cannot. So that's sort of one area. The other area is obviously like from a cost perspective, in terms of like cost of living crisis, accommodation costs, food costs. Like a lot of students either maybe feel like they can't even come into campus, maybe because of cost of buses, maybe because like if you can't like afford certain things, maybe don't want to come in. Maybe even the technology that you see other people with, like you may not be able to sort of keep up with lectures and things. Obviously, we talk a lot about like lecture capture, and that's a really, really important thing. But students need to be there needs to be provisions provided for students that maybe need like extra laptop support and things like that. And then in terms of we touched on like racism and anti-Semitism, people need to feel comfortable to be able to come in and learn. And so all these things need to come together for students to feel that education is accessible. And then also as president, you obviously have a seat in the NUS sort of delegate committee. And so it's really, really important to go there and to push these accessibility requirements and to push the fact that education shouldn't be this business. It should be accessible, and it should be like a resource for people to sort of like obviously gain their education and gain sort of a bridge into like other careers.
Okay, thank you. Just for the last two questions, we're running out of time, so I'll have to hurry up a little bit. That's absolutely fine, no way. What will you do to make the student community aware of what the SU does and the decisions that are being made?
So first of all, you could say social media, but I don't think you can criticize the current full-time officers for their the amount of TikToks that they are putting out at the moment. And so clearly we need to take a different tack. And also emails. I know that I'm secretary and vice president of the society, and it got to the point where so few people were reading my emails that I was putting challenges on the end, and no one was even doing my challenges. So we really need to take a different look. So the first step of this is to discuss with students where would they like to see this information. In Freshers Week, to put on like courses or events that highlights the things that the SU does, to have more advertisements, not just sort of in the SU building, but maybe in lectures, maybe on the back of toilet doors, things like that, that discuss the options within the SU. And then when it comes to things like the all-student vote, there needs to be sort of a push for like why these things are important. So it's all good saying that the all-student vote is on, but if you just saw ASV on a poster, which is quite often what you do see, what is that? What does that even mean? Even if you break that down to all-student vote, what are you voting on? And when you look at these motions, loads of people don't have time to like read through these motions, to read through like the small print. And so I think that deters people even more. So it needs to be like, this information needs to be made more accessible. And it needs to be in conjunction with a student consultation about how they would like to see that happen.
Right. Thank you. And finally, as SU president, you are the students' leading representative to the vice chancellor of the university. What do you think the relationship between the Students' Union and the university should look like?
So it needs to be strong. Like they need to be hand in hand. As like elected full-time officers, it's your responsibility to represent the student body, but there's no point representing that if the only person you're talking to is the Students' Union, because at the end of the day, although we'd like to think that they have a lot of sort of influence, they don't. And so when you look at universities like, for example, I was talking to the president of UCL's SU, the relationships between them and the university is much stronger, and this makes it much easier for like discussions such as lowering accommodation costs, cheaper food prices, sustainability, and so work needs to be done so that these conversations can be had, because that is where we will make the actual change, and that is where, rather than having lobbying in manifestos, it will be like actual action can be like demanded.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us for these interviews. I wish you best of luck in the elections.
No, thank you very much.
That was Archie Clark from the Boar interviewing Molly Palmer, one of the candidates running in the SU Spring Elections for the role of president. Now, Luke, to bring you in here, we've had several different issues that came up in these interviews, and I'm sure will come up during the course of campaigning. So let's dig a little bit deeper into some of them. Let's start off with the whole idea of transparency around the SU and understanding what's actually going on in the SU. What have you made of this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the key things, to be honest with you, James. It's been brought up so many times, both in the interviews and in the question time events last week. It's the idea that, you know, from the top to the bottom, the SU has to be clear in what it's doing. There's been a lot of calls for the Board of Trustees meetings to be sort of publicised and condensed a lot more, to really make those meetings, sort of everything behind the scenes, more accessible to students, you know, because they have a big say. They've had a big say in some of the motions that have passed this year. And it's something that, you know, students need to know about. There needs to be that consistency and that transparency with what's going on behind the scenes. So I think that's an absolutely massive one for sure.
Indeed, the Board of Trustees, that is where the all student vote motions go. They don't stop and become SU policy straight away when they're voted on by students. They have to go to the Board of Trustees to be ratified and to make sure that everything complies with charity law and all of the different rules and regulations that come with the Students Union. But again, with some of the different all student vote motions, we've seen the Board of Trustees take votes and make decisions on these all student vote motions, and lots of the candidates picking up on the fact that this should be communicated to students. Now, going on to one of the other issues that has been brought up in the interviews is the cost of living crisis. Luke, what do you think the president of the Students' Union should be doing in this area?
Yeah, I think it's a massive one, to be honest with you, James. I think it's one of those that, you know, the SU president can't just tackle this head on their own. You know, you've got so many vice presidents that need to help out with that, because it's something that's so universal. It affects everything. It affects everyone in its own right. So be it the SU food outlets, for instance, you know, if you're looking at Roots grocery stores, students are very vocal about the price increases on that. Student accommodation, sports clubs, societies, that kind of thing, transport, you know, it really does sort of cover all bases. So whilst it's great and it's something that needs to be pledged, I think students also have to be quite realistic as to what they can expect from an SU president in that regard, because I think it's something that can and will be tackled head on, but it's also something that, you know, you have to work with so many different parties, so many different people, including the university itself, on these things. So I think it's a big one. I think students can expect, you know, things to be done, but at the same time, I think there needs to be sort of realistic targets that need to be made and set, and obviously most importantly achieved.
Indeed, and you bring up all of the different officers that the president is going to have to work with. The cost of living crisis has been one of the key questions that's come up in lots of the different interviews that we've done. So if you've missed those interviews with the other full-time officers, you'll also be able to find those on YouTube as well. Going on to one more issue and one final issue that has come up in these interviews, and I'm sure will come up during the election campaign. It's the whole idea of student wellbeing and mental health. Now, this has been a focus at Warwick for a number of years. Lots of students have been quite vocal about this. What do you think some of the key issues in this area are, Luke?
Yeah, I think a big one is particularly the way in which different departments deal with certain situations differently. You know, this is a really big thing. You know, Warwick is sort of renowned for perhaps more of its STEM student cohort, and the measures that the likes of the economics department or, you know, these kind of STEM subjects, they are different to the humanities. And that is a massive thing that will impact so many of Warwick students on both sides of the spectrum, you know. So I think that's a massive one. And you also need to look at the sort of signposting, what students can access, how can they access that. That can't just fall on the president. That has to be something that is universally achieved by the SU this year. I think that's, yeah, so those are the two main things, is just ensuring that, you know, support is out there, students know how to get it. I think that's the main thing.
So plenty of issues at hand in these SU elections, particularly for the role of president. So you've heard the interviews, you're able to find all of the candidate manifestos on the Warwick SU website. Now, just before we wrap up, Luke, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what the Boar has been doing in covering the SU elections in terms of the question time and some of the articles and the paper that is coming out this week?
Yeah, cool. So obviously last week we covered the question time events. We'll have some roundup articles of each of the 3 nights, which will go up this week. We've got our print edition, which as of recording, I believe comes out tomorrow. As of this going live will probably be yesterday. So very confusing on that front. But the facts of the matter is this week, the print edition will be out, which tells you everything you need to know in terms of how to vote and what to expect from this year's elections. We've also got the recordings of the interviews that will be obviously posted on Raw's YouTube channel. We have the manuscripts for them, so we've been working on articles to make those sort of accessible to be read online as well. So a lot to expect from us this week.
Indeed, great stuff. Luke, thank you very much for joining me on these very special programmes for the SU Spring Elections. One quick reminder before we finish, do tune in to The Big Decision, the live results show, where we will find out who the next SU officers are. That's going to be on Friday at 6 p.m. on the Raw Visual YouTube channel. And thank you very much for watching. Enjoy election week.
Across campus, online, and on 12:51 AM. This is your student radio station.